Well, today I have a Pathe Model 50 phonograph I picked up yesterday. Actually, it was delivered to me yesterday. A gentleman was passing through from DC and offered to drop it off. This is an interesting machine. I don't have a lot of experience with Pathe, and generally these machines are for vertical cut records, you know, up, down on the needle, and the reproducer tends to sit like this on the record. And of course in this country the horizontal was much more popular, normal position, all the Victor machines, all of that. This one's horizontal, side to side grooves, you know, the grooves are on the sides, you know, of the vibrations come from the side of the groove, not the bottom. Now this one, right away you can see something's a little bit off. This has been remotored, pretty common thing. The story with it was a gentleman took this in payment for something, some sort of work done during the Great Depression, and at some point must have needed a motor, maybe a spring broke or he couldn't get parts, couldn't afford them, whatever, and they remotored it. Now I suspect the work is probably a lot more recent than the Depression. I mean, someone might have gotten it then in return for some form of labor or whatever, but this work here is much more modern. There's no rust on the nail heads. Everything looks fairly new. I mean, it's well done, but definitely new. What they had to do, because they use what I suspect is a Brunswick motor in here. I haven't really researched it yet, but I suspect it's Brunswick. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but it just looks it. Somewhere in my memory dredged up that this is what a Brunswick kind of looks like, one of their motors. So, nothing wrong with it. It's a good motor. Very well built, very nice. Heavy cast parts and all of that, but it was too big to fit into this case, so what they had to do was raise it up about ½ an inch. So what they did was just add those pieces of wood to bring the level of the motorboard up so that those springs would clear the horn and all the rest. I suspect the original Pathe motor, I don't want to put that on the reproducer, original Pathe motor, the springs must have sat in here somewhere so that it would clear easier. Now we have a little bit of a problem here. They had to re-drill the crank hole slightly over. You know, the original was here and they moved it to here. And what we have is what looks like mouse chewings around the edge. The mouse decided to enlarge in the hole so we could make a house in here. I'm going to get a copper or brass plate and just put it over there to cover that and drill a hole through it for the crank and all of that. Because I really don't have, I mean, I have another Pathe, but the motor is different. It's an older machine. Used to be a floor model that somebody cut the bottom off and just left the top, but it's a much larger machine with a bigger motor. And this looks like somebody, either Pathe had it or this is some kind of a sound control. I can see this is supposed to slide in here, but it's stuck. Maybe it's permanently glued that way. I haven't investigated yet. And I see down here where the rod goes through, that's a pretty big opening they've left. That should be plugged up with some felt so that there's an uninterrupted, I mean, this should all be sealed with glue, because you don't want anything interrupting your sound waves going from the reproducer, the tone arm, down through here and out this very nicely made wooden horn. Look at how they did this, almost like shoemaker type thing with making shoes, little tacks to hold it all in, probably steam bent that. I see some seeds in there that are probably left over from the mouse, which is now long gone because I can't smell anything anymore, so long gone now. Coffin top style, which I'm kind of surprised Victor let them get away with. This would be from the 1920s. Got a nice grill in the front, which is missing its fabric, but that's easy enough to find and replace. Just glue it on there. Now the whole thing just comes right out like that. Put that back in there so it doesn't get lost. The reproducer had a few issues when it came in. It had been, the gentleman who had it rebuilt by somebody, but they didn't really understand quite what they were doing. I think there was an issue with this plate on top being a little bit bent from being pot metal, swollen, a little crack there, but he was trying to use a combination of white tube gasket from an exhibition and some kind of foam gasket piece, and the foam just did not conform very well. It was forcing the diaphragm that was in there to bend. So it was all wavy looking diaphragm. It was a celluloid diaphragm, but I think that's what they're made out of. But this is a Victrola number 2 mica diaphragm that is sitting flat. What I did was I left the piece of exhibition tubing that was in there down in there, and I put another piece of exhibition tubing here that I cut right down one side and slipped it over. You know, slipped it right over the diaphragm and put it in there so it's completely sealed and it's sitting in there properly, even with this being bent a little bit. The needle bar is not bent. You can see it's missing a thumb screw, but there is a screw there. That does work. They had over-tightened the tension screws a little bit, but took care of that. So we're going to test that later once I go over the motor. I'm not going to clean the motor right now. I don't think. Well, not right away. I want to see if it works, actually. But I want to test the reproducer to see if what I did works, which I'll be doing in the next video. Let's put this in here for safekeeping for the moment, so I don't put anything on top of it. Because first I want to take care of the air leaks here to make sure we have a good, solid setup there. Probably some felt up here, too, to kind of seal it when it pushes down on there. Strangely, they didn't replace the screws here. They left the motor board just sitting in there, which is good because it's easy for me to take out. But I do have screws to fit that, and I will be replacing those so that there are, this can't move around independently of anything else. You can see they changed the position of the speed control, and you can see the old screw holes where they used to be for the old motor. You can see the old motor sat over more this way than this one does. This one sits over here, and that's why you had to put some relief cuts here. This is a mouse chew, I think. But overall, it's in pretty good condition. You know, it's not all beat up, and it's got a nice patina on it. And while this would be considered an off-brand in this country, Pathe was a very big French company. They made phonographs for many years, and other things too, like cameras and various other devices. Oh, it's the other thing that was done to it. Forgot. Somebody, they put wooden feet on it. See the wooden feet there? I mean, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that, but I would have gone with a rubber bumper, but possibly they were not available to whoever did the work. Nice mahogany. Very dark mahogany. You see that on a lot of Victors too. Age does that. This would have been a much more red color like you see under the hood. Well, I guess that's dark too. That's a bit dark too. Just a color, I guess. That's the original tone arm. Not sure what this is all about, but this could be so that it could be adjusted to play a vertical cut if you wanted to. Not really sure. That's the reproducer would not work for that, but possibly there was one such available. A little loose there, it seems, but I know from the other Pathe that that's just how they are. This is number 11783. I mean, I have no way of looking that number up that I'm aware of, but yeah, I'm going to guess the age of this machine to be mid-20s, just by the style of it and, you know, all of that. It looks it. But it could be older. I just don't know. It could definitely be older. But there you go. Here's a look down in there, this Pathe Model 50. And I'll show the motor. Thought it was Heinemann for a minute, the motor, when I saw this crank, but they're used on a lot of different things. And that's not saying this could be some type of Heinemann motor too, I don't know. I can definitely tell somebody's been playing with it. There's some grease on there, there's some oil. I can see some banging around has been done on the spring barrels. So somebody probably had the springs out at some point. That's white grease. Love how this thing is adjustable. This has a fiber gear in it, by the way, so I don't know if you can see that in there, but it's there. It's a Heinemann style with the brass sandwich of with the fiber in the middle. Worm gear there for the governor. Swiss style weights by the look of them. And that, the friction leather isn't leather, that is a felt. And you can see this is adjustable. See that brass block right there on the end of the governor? You can adjust it from the thumb wheel there to perfection on the gear. Interesting. Gears look good. I don't see anything particularly wrong. I guess they wouldn't have used a crap motor if they were going to go through the trouble of remotoring this. If this did have some form of Heinemann motor, I'm kind of surprised they did, because parts are available even today for that. Okay, well, there you go. There's a first look at the Pathe 50. If I can get it, I don't know if that motor even works, but if I can get it going, I will do a video of that, testing the reproducer, to see if I screwed it up or if it's going to work the way it is. I think it will. I've done similar work with these types of primitive reproducers before. This is very, very basic. There's no isolated gasket on this. It's just tube gaskets, a diaphragm, simple needle bar, a couple little tension springs there, that's it. You know. Okay, and there we go. The Pathe 50.